All right, guys. Welcome to another weekly live training. My name is Gavin Techler. I'm founder of Dividend Shift, guys. So we got this cool little feature. We're going to be doing a dual stream. If you see like my setup right now, let me see if I can do the Meta Ray-Bans if it works. But basically, I'm able to like dual stream all this stuff at the same time. So it's pretty cool. So we're going to go over a few different features like today and like a few different lessons. So if this is your first time actually attending one of these live trainings, what I want you to do is comment live below. If you're watching on Instagram, if you're watching on the Facebook group, if you're watching on YouTube or on my personal page, we're all over the place, guys. So the reason why I bring this up is because every week, go over the basics. These are like 30 minutes long, unless I keep talking. And it's just as much value as possible because there's these massive opportunities out there. I want you to be able to take advantage of them. And for you to do that, you got to get educated. Whether you work with me or not, it doesn't matter. You will leave this being more aware of like what is out there for you to take advantage of this week, guys. All right. So I'm seeing a few comments on the right. I'm seeing them on Instagram also and on Facebook. Got my assistant in here. So if I send you a message on Instagram, don't worry. It's me. It's one of my assistants actually messaging also. And then also, how many guys have been like getting over like this bug? I've like been getting killed. I don't know about you guys, but absolutely demolished with this bug on I'm down in South America right now, but I'm seeing people like Miami. I get friends in like one friend in Antarctica. He's like, we got it up here too. I want you to comment bug below, comment bug. A little unorthodox, but is like the craziest thing. And, you know, I'm down in Medellin, guys, in Colombia, just bought an office. So like we're just doing things as much as possible here. But the craziest thing of like the difference, what I've found between here and between obviously living in the US is the availability of things, which is craziness to me. So, you know, if I got to the point where I'm like, you know what, it's been like 10 days. I'm really sick. I probably should get this checked out. Right. And so send a text message on WhatsApp at a doctor at my door in an hour. It's like, this is craziness. Right. And then they're like, hey, if you need some medications, and I'm thinking like, you know, the US where you have to actually go to the pharmacy, sometimes make an appointment, all that good stuff. Right. I was like, yeah, man, I guess I'll just get it tomorrow. I was like, tomorrow? It'll be here in like 10 minutes. I'm like, what? And you kind of just realize like we're a little behind the times in the US, guys. All right. So exciting stuff. That's why I bring this up because, you know, this is very popular down here and in other countries. So we're able to take advantage here, guys. Cool. So with that being said, what I want to do is see actually like where you're watching this training from. So like I mentioned, I'm in Medellin, Colombia. So if you want to comment below the city and state or the country, because there's a lot of people that are international, just so I can see where you guys are at, right? And you guys will see some comments pop up on the side. Pete, what's going on? Rico, Mr. Sapient, can't see that. Stella, Andrew, Alona, I'm seeing some comments. And then let me pull up the Instagram also. Don't be ashamed to actually comment where you are. So let's do this. Awesome. Cool. So for today, we're going to go over some pretty cool stuff. I'm actually pretty excited. I want to go over the basics. I'm going to do a little screen share here in a second. I had a special guest, but I thought, you know what, it's going to it's a really long lesson. So next week also, it's going to be something pretty cool on like ads and, you know, how you can take advantage of this, especially if you're a social media creator. Like this is killer for you. And so today we're going to go over a few different things. All right. So we're over the basics of what we call the digital payment business. And if you're in the space, you know, this is like the future of like what's coming right now. But we're going to go over the basics. And then we're going to go over what I call the 5K month plan, which is meaning like simple way for you to scale this pretty quickly. And then from there, how a 7-figure entrepreneur would be thinking when they're building this also. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is let me do a screen share. If I can find my screen. There we go. So I'm not like the most tech savvy. I'm just going to have to hire somebody to like do all the tech for these trainings, guys, because after a certain point, you're like, what the heck's going on, right? So I see Instagram is working. I see Facebook, and I see you guys live here too, all right? So pretty exciting just for today's training. Like I mentioned, I want to go over a few different things also, but essentially like the way you want to think about this, right? So let's see. I think my screen froze. Let's just pull this up. Let's see. All right, there we go. Yeah. So we're going to go over a few different lessons for today, right? So the first thing, like I mentioned, the 5-step beginner plan that I mentioned, this is more like foundational level. And then from there, I call it the 5K month game plan. So that way, you know exactly what you need to do to be successful with this. And then, like I said, the 7-figure mentality when you're doing this. And this comes from myself because whenever I'm thinking of like building a business and scaling it, there's very specific frameworks I follow to get it as quickly as possible to the number I want. And you guys can take advantage also today. All right. So if you're excited, you're like, hey man, this is going to be maybe not life-changing, but it is just gonna be another source of income for you. What I want you to do is comment income below. Comment income, all right? There's a few reasons. Number one, reach. People see the comments like, what the heck's going on over here? They want to get in. Don't worry, there's enough opportunity for everybody. And then the other thing is also going to be that it tags you. So you get the replay. So I'm going to be dropping a few different gems throughout this. And what I mean by that is essentially there's some resources we just got up. There's some new video trainings, like there's all these different things for you. So I want you to remember, because let's be realistic, 30 minutes from now, you're probably going to forget. All right. So with that being said, what I want to do is break down like the basics. So, in case you don't know, my name's Gavin Tecklin, founder of this company, worked with some other brands behind the scenes. So some of you guys have worked with me as clients for other companies also. But essentially the reason I bring this up is, it's Veterans Day today. So I always, if you're in the military, first of all, and if you served, thank you for your service. But it was the Marine Corps birthday yesterday, right? So you see the smile come out because, when I talk about the Marines, man, I get pretty excited. So essentially, the reason I bring this up is because I always look back. I'm like, man, before like extra zeros came in the bank account and investments, you always start somewhere, and it was negative for me. So it comes down to, when you're building businesses, when you're, making that change for whatever investment you're getting into, it comes down to a decision, right? So I break this down to 2 different seasons, right? And if you guys are in like, 4-season places like, Canada or Antarctica or whatever, the way you want to think about this is there's 2 seasons for business and income. There's the season of learning, and then there's the season of earning, right? So the reason I say this is because, I suffered through the season of learning for a while. And what I mean by that is, moment after I turned 18, joined the United States Marines, because obviously I was not going to go to college, not going to do like this traditional route, right? Long story short, got out of the Marine Corps, ended up at some dead end jobs, right? Because, once in a while when you learn how to shoot an M16A4, you're just thinking like, what transferable skills do I have? And it really wasn't much other than like security, right? So eventually got to this point where I was basically spiraling out of debt. And what I mean by that is, I was swiping credit cards. It was ridiculous. I'm talking about, I don't know how they allowed me to do this, but I would just have like all these different credit cards and just swiping away my expenses. The rent was getting covered with credit, my car note, like all these different things. And it became like this downward spiral. And some of you guys have been in that position before also, so you know what I'm talking about. And it got to a point where it's just like, man, like this can't be the way we're going, because I am really going downhill very quickly. So I had to make a change, right? And this is one of those first few changes, but essentially decided, it's like, you know what? You got to get out this relationship. Decided to, I was estranged from my family for a little while. I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to sleep in my freaking car. I was in the Marines. We slept in the field all the time anyway, whatever. It's leather seats. So for months, until I could like just get control of the expenses, I was just staying in my car, right? Taking showers at 24-hour fitness, get a quick workout in. But that was the cycle, right? And I'm not going to lie, it was a pretty embarrassing point in my life. It was a pretty embarrassing point because it's like, man, how did I go from like, being proud of this uniform to like being in this position myself? So I figured, F it. This is the way things are going. This is gonna be my life, out of shape, whatever, until I actually met a police officer, right? And so I say a police officer is a deputy sheriff. And the reason I say this is because, essentially you're just one step away and you're one person away from changing your life. That's just what it is. Whether it's a mentor, family member, sometimes it's a spouse, a newborn, whatever. So eventually that sheriff I ran into was just like this craziest thing, almost like a spotlight on him. It was one of those like, hey, you should apply to be a cop. And back then it was a lot different, right? And I was thinking to myself, like, there's no way I'm gonna be a police officer. Like that's not within my stars to align. Like, there's no way. And so, long story short, he sold me on it. Started applying to a lot of different departments. I was getting denied left and right. It's what I call like a shotgun application. And usually you don't recommend that, but just every single place that had like a living, breathing job application, I put my name in there, right? And so it was just no, 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 no. And it's just very discouraging until finally I got hired in the city of Oakland. And if you guys know Oakland, not Oakland, Florida, but Oakland, California, which is like the robbery capital of the nation. So, $90K a year starting salary, everything seems pretty good until going through the academy, I almost lost my job. And what do I mean by that? Well, essentially, I was in a bad relationship. I, was not able to pay attention. Like 12 months in, or about 6 months into the academy, because it's about like 6.5 months, they dropped the news like, hey, man, you're just not going to pass. And it was just gut wrenching. I thought to myself, like, am I stupid? How do you have like the best opportunity and it just doesn't work out for you? So eventually, just talk to a captain over there. That person happened to be in the Marines. He understood. He's like, dude, you're an idiot. You need to change this, this, this. And I just restarted. Right. So starting all over, it's pretty embarrassing because ultimately, when you think about it, you just went 6 months into something and they're like, cool, start over at 0. Right. And so it's just one of those like ego things you had to check. Pretty embarrassed, lost the self-confidence, like everything hits. In hindsight, not a big deal, but at the time it was just ridiculous. I got a question. many of you guys have like been in that position where you just have to reset? What I mean by that is like you just had a position where like, I just got to reset this thing. I want you to comment reset below. Comment reset. Because I know I'm not the only one, and I know a lot of you guys kind of go through the same thing also. But essentially, the reason I say this is because you're going to have those moments. Like sometimes in the future too, you might make a bad investment and just it is what it is. But the reason being is it's the chapter, it's the season of learning. So finally, graduated academy, decided I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna work every single day. I was working about like 80, 90, 100 hours a week because I was just like, I'm just gonna save, save, save. Decided to live in a basement in the hood, guys. Because I thought to myself, I was like, you know what? F it. What's gonna happen, right? Let me just save as much as possible. I'm single, figure this out. And I saved every single penny. I was as stingy as can be. I didn't pay for anything. I didn't want milk if it cost more than my coffee. I was just like, we need to get out of this debt. So all that saving obviously turned into what I call the best day of my life. My net worth hit zero. And it's probably, you're probably thinking like, dude, really? Zero? It's like, you don't get it. Like when you're so negative that you're making minimum payments on your cards and you're like, you have like $342. And like, do I make the minimum payment or I just go negative on my account? Like those are days. And so eventually got debt paid off, continued to live in the hood because it's like, you know what? It worked. Let me just stick to the same thing over and over. And I kept that save, save, save mentality, which is some of you guys also. But essentially what ends up happening is you realize like you have to make that transition out of saving because you're not going to save your way to success. So at this point, I realized like, hey, the 9 to 5 is not enough. The 9 to 5 is not enough. So I tried multiple different ventures. Anything you can think of, guys. Like there's a story for everything. I'm talking about like Amazon. So I tried FBA. I tried, renting cars on GetAround, Turo, day trading, which is a terrible idea for me. Had a rental property, like all these different things. Even opened a retail storefront in San Francisco. Terrible idea because the most common thing was time. I just did not have time. So I was at this point, I was like, you know what? Maybe this whole business and investment things were not for me. I'll do my 35 years, I'll retire, and I'll just, live on the beach after that, which obviously doesn't make sense. So I got a question for you. It's like, who has been in a similar situation where you're just like, man, nothing seems to work. Nothing seems to work. I want you to comment mission below. And the reason why is because ultimately your motivation, that motivation is not going to do it. Your motivation will fade, but it's your mission that's actually going to drive it. So when it comes down to it, the way you want to think about it is like this, right? Once you determine your mission, meaning that you said, hey, you know what, I'm going to save this much because I have a family, I have my kids, retirement fund, or I just want a Lamborghini, whatever it is, you just drive towards that because you're going to have days that you're just like, I'm exhausted, et cetera, et cetera. So picture the season of earning, meaning that I decided it's like, you know what? I'm just going to start investing into some residual income sources. And the reason this actually came up, it's the funniest thing. I'm driving around, driving on my patrol car. We just got the Bluetooth in there. So I'm jamming. I am like feeling good. And I just see this guy in the hills, in the Oakland Hills. The guy's just like relaxed. It felt like the clouds were everywhere and the lights on him. And I'm just like, man, this guy's like relaxed. He got the Porsche, got the nice house. I know it's worth like 3 or 4 mil. I'm thinking like something's going on because he's chilling or relaxing on a Thursday. So I'm thinking, okay, this guy's got to be doing something. So I strike up a conversation. And for initially, he's like, hey, man, officer, what's going on? Is everything okay? It's like, no, I just want to like get a conversation. Like, what do you do? It's like, I own a few businesses, right? And that then it's like, it's just this foreign concept. I was like, I'm not a business owner. I just don't identify that. So he broke it down and it just became so simple for me. I was thinking to myself, like, wow, because this guy had like parking lots, laundromats, like basically the boring businesses that are pushed a lot nowadays. But yeah, remember, this is like almost 10 years ago. And I'm thinking to myself, like, you're making all this money from that? I was like, yeah, I just do one, launch, scale, get another, buy another, et cetera, until it's just like this daisy chain effect. And I didn't realize there's this entire opportunity out there, this entire industry that's just in plain sight because you use these businesses, you use ATMs, credit cards, crypto payments now. But essentially, like there's this entire industry of boring businesses. So instead, I just focused on simple ideas. I thought to myself, like, like get rich quick mentality obviously doesn't work because the people pushing it aren't in the position I'm in. And you don't want to listen to people that aren't in the place you're in. So I started focusing on simple things that created residual income. You're talking about like some online income, obviously investing in digital assets like crypto and all that good stuff back then, real estate, some different methods to make money online. But the whole focus was like, I just need to increase cash flow. And when it comes down to it with business guys, it just comes down to cash flow and investments. A lot of people will have the save, save, save mentality. And they'll say, oh, okay, cool, awesome. I'm just going to save for my 401k and whatever. And then 2025 hits and all of a sudden you're like, you have no money in the bank account. And you realize, oh, it was all about cash flow the entire time. So you fast forward a few years later, all I did was, like I mentioned, focus on simple data that worked. And then eventually quit law enforcement because obviously there were some political things going on at the time. I said, I will not be a part of this. This does not coincide with my values. Hey, all that aside, I was in a position to have over 7 figures saved up, cash flow, covering my expenses, good friend that I started working with, and you fast forward to today. So why does this even matter? The reason I bring this up is because ultimately your actions today, the things you start today will determine your next chapter. And you might not think that. I didn't think that at the time. I have my journal to my right and I thought like, there's no way. And you fast forward, you're like, how do these things happen so fast? So if you're ready for the season of earning, what I mean by that is like, you know what? I've been learning. Maybe you had some little punches along the way. Like you're like Rocky Balboa, number 3. I want you to comment now. And the reason why is because ultimately at the end of the day, you just have to acknowledge like, hey, you know what? I have this business that's doing this much. I have these investments, but it's just not enough for you right now. And that's the reason why you're seeking something more. Let's just be realistic. I like to address the elephant in the room. So what I want to do is break down the beginner's basics, right? So this is what I call the mandatory steps that are necessary for this business. And I'm going to break down exactly like what this is, first of all, too. So if you're just joining and you're on IG, make sure you click the link in the bio so that way you access the recording, or send me a message because it's not going to be saved on IG. So essentially the way you want to think about this is ultimately all you're doing is placing devices like this at businesses, right? So I have one over here. So basically you might be used to like devices like this. These are simple like payment processing, meaning like credit cards go in there. Then you ask yourself like, who does not have the ones that accept crypto? So what you do is you place devices like this. The customer is going to decide to pay in crypto. And then from there, what ends up happening is the customer's going to choose which one they want to pay in. There's multiple different options. And then the merchant's going to enter in the amount. So whether it's like $500, 57 plus a tip, $34.99, 20% tip, whatever, right? It covers all industries. And then the customers are going to scan a QR code, just like when they're sending digital assets. And at that point, that's when the payment actually happens. The thing is this, the merchant is actually going to actually receive the cash equivalent. And what do I mean by that? Well, essentially the way you want to think about this is the merchant doesn't want to get crypto. Let's just be realistic. Nowadays, they just want to get paid. They want to get their employees paid, et cetera. So the merchant themselves will get cash for whatever the payment comes in, and you earn a percentage. So why do I bring this up? Essentially, that is just the business model. And what I mean by that is, as you partner with more and more businesses, especially e-commerce, you start generating more and more accounts. It's just like traditional payments. And then you start making more and more in residuals, right? So it's a very simple model, scalable. When it comes down to it, it's like it doesn't take that much time, a few hours a week, and you're able to actually have no overhead, which is like the biggest problem in business, right? So you're probably wondering, like, why does this even matter? Well, when it comes down to it, we have to break down traditional payments. Like you have to understand this before you understand, right? So this is the way I look at it. You have all these different payment processors. Whenever you go to a business, somebody pays, right? I'm going to make this full screen so you can see. So think about it like this. Let me turn off the comments too. So essentially, you're going to have a charge that happens every time there is a payment, right? And so what that means for you is actually pretty simple. So every time somebody charges like your credit card, like Amex, Visa, whatever, you go to a business, there's a fee, 3 to 4%, right? So it's usually going to be the business owner that charges that. Nowadays, there's the whole programs where we charge the customer. But the reason I bring this up is because there's obviously some profit built in. So typically that's split among different things. There's like banks, there's processors, sponsoring ISOs, like every single thing you can think of, right? And then there's individual agents that earn a percentage too. They're typically people like you. Now you start running some numbers. If they're doing like $10,000 a month, which is like some normal business, you make like $300 a month, $50K a month, you're making like 1,500, but there's all these expenses built in, right? So the entire industry generates over $100 billion in profit just off the fees. Like every time you swipe, there's a charge, whether it's an airplane ticket, whether it's like a escape room, a med spa, whatever it is, there's somebody profiting off of that because there's payments that are happening. So the reason I say this is because that industry is pretty dang competitive. It's established. It's been around obviously for over 2 decades. So you start realizing how there's already some relationships built in. It's not that there's not opportunities, but essentially the way you have to think about it is, the path of resistance, is it higher or lower with the thing I'm doing? So there's a shift happening. And I'm sure you're aware of this, especially since there's way more news articles popping up. But there's major companies investing significantly in crypto payments. You're talking, and you probably see some of these brands, you're like, wait, what are you talking about? And you just got to Google it. Stripe, Square, PayPal, Coinbase, JP Morgan. There's a few things happening where essentially there's this shift happening that no one's paying attention to. And it is what it is, right? Because yourself, you're going to take advantage because you're here. Other people, equal opportunity, unequal results, they're just not going to get there as soon as you. So the other thing is going to be there's a lot of investment happening in the federal government. And as we know, unfortunately, the US is the prime country that drives the economics of the world. So there's a race to be the crypto capital. So I'm not pushing you to say, let's buy Bitcoin, this or that. That's not what I'm saying. But if you're able to sell the picks and shovels during the gold rush, you don't care about how much gold is found. You're like, I just want to be in the middle, right? So let's go into some stats. As long as you guys see this, there's about 93,000 people that own, and this is just a ratio, a 93,000 to 1 ratio of people that own crypto to actual businesses accepting crypto. That's like an like there's such a small ratio of businesses. I'm just trying to break down the opportunity. And then from there was a survey that actually happened, and it was 70% of the people surveyed. They said, hey, you know what? Like they'd pay with crypto for a lot of luxury expenses, things like that, if it was even available. And then there's another survey, and it break down millennials, right? And you might be a millennial also, but it said 82% of them made at least one crypto purchase in 2024, right? And it can be for anything. Sometimes it's like an online thing, a subscription, whatever, but the action actually happens. So the reason I bring this up is because there is a problem. The problem is this: merchants are unaware. You go to businesses, they don't know. You talk to them like, hey, do you accept this? Like, what are you talking about? It's just like this foreign concept, right? Like, forget about it. Like if you watch The Godfather. So this becomes a massive opportunity for yourself. So what I want to do is actually break down the beginner basics so you can take advantages on your own. If you decide to work with us at the end, awesome. But at least you know how to do it yourself, right? So let's break down the beginner steps. But I have a question. Before we start, how many of you have not been to a business that accepts digital asset payments, crypto? I want you to comment me below. Comment me if you've not been to a business that accepts crypto payments. I'll give you guys a second. I see the comments on the right. Here we go. Now let me check the Instagram also. Cool. So I say this for a reason, all right? Basically, the way you want to think about this, I see Rico, Stella, Mr. Sapient. I don't see the first name there. Well, the way you want to think about this is ultimately, these are all different opportunities for you, because when it comes down to it, that just means that it stood out to you for a reason, because it's extremely rare. So the thing is, you want to break down the foundations to figure out how you could take advantage and decide actually if you want to in the first place, right? So let's break down what I call the 5-step process. It's more foundations. Think of it as like almost like an octagon where it has like different angles. You're just the foundations to build your business. So the first thing you want to do is actually get your business up and running, your corporation, whatever it is in the country you're in, because we obviously have a lot of clients across the world, but typically in the US and Canada, it's a corporation, LLC, et cetera, right? The reason being is there's a few tax advantages. I'll put it that way. I was actually just talking to my tax lawyer because I owe like a lot of money to the government, all right? And if you're a part of the IRS, don't look me up, but I owe a decent amount of money. So he's like, all right, we'll do this. When was that business formed? What about this? What about the accounting? I was like, thank God I filed for that LLC, because there's a lot of advantages. Like we shout the United States of corporations, unfortunately. So you want to take advantage of that, and also protection. You know, I have a quick story in law enforcement. The reason I found out about this was, ended up getting sued. And apparently it's just normal to get sued in law enforcement. I didn't know this at the time because I was scared. I had this affidavit. They're like, you shall show up in court. I was like putting handcuffs on myself. And essentially, the reason I bring this up, long story short, is they made you list out assets. They said, hey, we just need to figure out how much your house is worth, any businesses, things like that. They're separate, but we just need to know that you're not hiding money. So the reason I bring this up is the protections, because they said, hey, that's separate. Don't worry about that. As long as it's not like, you're paying for personal expenses. But the reason being is like you protect yourself, because the worst thing that can happen is that McDonald's incident where the lady has a hot coffee, the opposite of this, and she's like, oh, it's too hot, and she sues the company. Because unfortunately in the US and Canada, that's just the way it is now. People just like to sue for everything. So you want to protect the income you're having coming in. So from there, you want to get your business bank account. There's a few different reasons. Number one, relationships. And I talked about this in a second, but as you start expanding, you realize that relationship's big. As you start generating more income, they see that. They're like, you know what? We're going to extend you more money because we want you to make money, because that means you're going to keep more money in our bank. We're going to loan that out. We make money off of you. It's a quid pro quo. So essentially, those are the main two things with your first step, which is the business and bank account. From there, what you want to do is partner with a processor. So there's a few different options. Actually, if you just Google crypto payments, most of them don't allow you to profit off of them. There's usually some nuances. But essentially what you want to look for is an established company that has like different cryptos people can pay with and a few other things. But essentially you just want to find a processing company to partner with in general. It could be us, it could be any other company, but you just need to have that as your second foundational step. From there, we go into location finding. And this is it's gonna be like the bread and butter, right? So I bring up location finding because ultimately this is what makes or breaks your business. Like you will make money or not make money based on this. And there's all these nuances, there's things you can do. I train that also, excuse me, like ads and like marketing in person and all that good stuff, which is great. But like if you have some like trailer park spot where no one goes to, like you're just not going to profit off of it. So what you typically want to look for is businesses that are open longer hours, 7 days a week, 24/7 is like phenomenal. This is especially from the digital ATM space. You want to look for merchants that actually want to work with you, because if they're an asshole, like the likelihood of it working out is just not going to happen, right? Because they just don't care. And so there wants to be that relationship. In addition to that, some of the best places to target, which we'll break down in a second, is going to be like high ticket locations. So some more nuanced industries that you could take advantage of right now until there's way more adoption. So the next foundational step is going to be equipment and offers. And this is a nuance. I actually just had an hour-long training on this in our inner circle. And like I mentioned, guys, I'm like 10 days into the sickness, so that's how it is. But essentially, the way you want to think about this is actually pretty simple, right? Number one is like, how are they going to accept payments? Like you go into a business, you want to buy a burger, you want to buy, fix your transmission. It's like, where do you pay? Is it, a terminal like this for like your credit cards? Or are you going to have like another device? Is it going to be online? Is it an e-commerce payment? Like you want to actually have that structured. So you want to know the basics of like, hey, these types of businesses do this, these do that, etc. And then you want to have your offer. So this is something small. This is a lot in like digital marketing and like the online space too, which is more where I specialize. But essentially, like you want to make it irresistible for that merchant to not work with you. And what I mean by that is like when you go there, you're like, hey, I do this, 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 and this. And like, where do you sign me up? And that's basically what it is. That's the next foundational step is like you want to structure it where it's a no-brainer for them. And then in addition to that, when it comes down to it, you want to make sure you have the right equipment, because let's be realistic. If somebody goes in there and they're like, hey, I want to spend $1,000, you're gonna make a percentage off of it, and there's nothing there, they're like, where do I pay? Now you got problems, right? So the next thing you actually want to do, which is going to be like the final step, because obviously you're going to sign up some locations, is you want to focus on scaling. This is really big right now, because if you just look up Square, like Square is like that payment processor, look up Square Bitcoin payments, it's going to blow your mind. They're going all in on crypto payments. And it's just Bitcoin, which is a nuance, it's a problem. But essentially it's showing that like, wait a second, there are some companies that are trying to gobble everything up right now for a reason. Because it's almost like the next Airbnb, the next Netflix, where they're like, wait a second, no one's offering this. Let's go right now. This is startup mode. So essentially, we want to focus on scaling. And there's two aspects to this. There's in-person and there's going to be digital. And what I mean by that, actually really simple. So essentially, the way you want to think about this is as you're in person, you're talking to business owners. Obviously, you're trying to incentivize them to use your equipment, get people to actually use a product also. But there's the digital aspect, which I'm going to go into also in a second. But what you want to have is a digital presence, and you want to have a way for people to reach out to you online. I'm going to show you a live website in a second, but you will need to have a way for people to say, hey, you know what? Who is this person? Are they legitimate? Should I sign up with them? Because nowadays, if you're not Googling somebody, you're not serious about doing business with them, right? So what I want to do is break down what I call the 5K a month plan, right? And the reason I bring this up, guys, is not the limit, it's not the minimum, but essentially it's like, hey, if we follow these fundamentals, like this is what I would do to actually get this up and running and scaling very quickly, which is what I did. So the first thing is the building the foundations. So, I took a lot of time on like the foundations, because at the end of the day, simplicity scales and complexity fails. And what I mean by that is if you're not actively focusing on like the fundamentals, you're just overcomplicating stuff and usually you go out of business. So a lot of this is just very simple, talking to merchants, getting them to sign up, adding more equipment, getting as many locations as possible. And that's basically it. There's some nuances that we talk about, but like that's it. You just want to focus and build the foundations for your business. The second step we're going to do is we're going to target the hottest locations first. And what I mean by that is, any business is an opportunity. All right. You can just go down the list and just boom, 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 sign up locations. But if you can go towards the path of least resistance with the limited amount of time you probably have, That's where the most value is at. So a few different types of businesses, a lot of times are smoke shops, peptides, medical industry, especially like dental offices, and a lot of like those smaller service businesses. You start talking about like car dealerships as an opportunity. There's high ticket businesses, people that sell like CBD, peptides online, supplements. Like there's all these different types of industries, online gaming, gambling, all that good stuff, right? And so the reason I say this is because ultimately they usually get screwed with traditional payment processing. So it's an easier sell. Number one, where they're like, all right, cool. Like you don't have to deal with any of these things. No, we don't. Boom, they're up and running. And second of all, you're going to have faster usage, meaning more profit faster, because it comes down to speed to getting this up and running and speed to actually being profitable. Let's be realistic. We're here to make as much money as possible. From there, I call step 3 is going to be building a referral network. So I kind of touch on this on like another video too, but basically the way you want to think about this is, your network equals your net worth. So if you're able to have a force multiplier, if you have people reaching out for people for you, or they say, hey, you know what? I know somebody, because you guys all have somebody like that, where you're like, hey, do you know anybody that does this? And they connect you. You basically are creating that yourself. So you start getting leads on autopilots. And then from there, what you want to do is, again, expand digitally. And what I mean by that is like your presence, your online presence, whether it's social media, advertising, YouTube, whatever it is, but you want to put yourself out there so you can take advantage of, I say like the money floating in the universe, but ultimately it's just the business that's out there that just doesn't know about you yet. And then from there, what we want to do is build your brand. And so there's 2 aspects of this. It could be your personal brand or it could be your business brand. Usually we're going to start with our personal first to take advantage of, and then we go to business, because that's what's going to be the easier route, because you're not building Geico, you're not building Coca-Cola overnight, but you can build yourself that leads into something that you have, like Mr. Beast, for example. But essentially, that's going to be the 5th thing you want to do to get there as soon as possible. Now, that's just the basics. I keep it as simple as possible, right? I'm trying to keep this as high level to get into this business. But if you need help with any of those steps, what I want you to do is comment build below. Comment build. And then what I'll do is I'll send you a message on Instagram if you're watching this here. I'll probably tag you on a free training, or if you're in the webinar, what we'll do is we'll send it to you right after, or the Facebook group too. So let's break this down, which is going to be what I call the 7-figure entrepreneur strategy, right? So the reason I brought this up, I actually get this question a lot. It's for unrelated businesses, where people are saying, hey, I'm scaling this. What do you think about that? I'm at this much revenue monthly. And I say, hey, this is what I would do, but I just want to give you a framework to think through so you can be successful on your own. So you don't need me. So it's the exact same thing with this business, because ultimately it's a race to get to 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 hours a month, right? But you always want to be thinking big picture of like, all right, where do I see myself a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now? Because it might seem like a far distance, but it's not, guys. Think about it. 2020 was just like a few years ago, and it seems like it was yesterday. So the reason I say this is from scaling a few different businesses, being behind the scenes of some other people and having some friends that launch and scale to 7 figures, sometimes a month, I realize a lot of principles are all the same in the space, right? So what we're talking about right now is 7 figures for the year, right? Which is $83,333 per month, right? That's what it is. But this applies the same thing if you're doing, to the point of like 8 figures a year also. So there's a few principles I like to follow, right? First one is understanding this. It's long-term, all right? I get this all the time, this get rich quick mentality. And I despise it, because I get it, right? We want to generate revenue as soon as possible, but it's like, hey, when somebody comes to me and sends me an IG message and like, hey man, like how much are you looking maybe generate from this? They're like, oh, like 100K a month. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, what are you doing right now? I was like, oh, I drive DoorDash. Like, okay, all right. And you're just kind of like, is there some disconnect here? Because what other industry, like get into real estate and make 100K net per month, right? Look at the portfolio size of that. So the reason I say this is because you have to understand this is a long-term investment. Think of it almost like a 401k, where you're saying, hey, as long as I can continually add income, even if it's just $200 a month, that's net profit. There's no overhead, there's no employees, there's no emotions, and there's no property or equipment. So when it comes down to it, the triple E, I call it, right? Equipment, emotions, and employees, right? That's usually what happens, like customers and service and all that. But if you don't have any of those and it's just profit going to your bank account, it's like, it's not that bad, right? Because if you want to do the exact same thing in real estate, you probably have to have, probably a duplex nowadays because of, obviously the rates, and you're making maybe $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month in rent. And after all expenses is said, that's how much you're making, right? So this is a long-term investment. And then the other thing you have to understand is like time is always greater than money. I can't tell you, I see this mistake all the time. People are like, hey, you know what? I want to save a few dollars, which is okay initially. right? But at a certain point, you realize like, what's my time worth? So I heard this a long time ago as a cop, and I was making about $65, $70 an hour. And I thought, okay, cool. My time is worth $75 an hour. It's not that much. So every time there was a decision to be made, I said, okay, if it's going to cost me an hour, would I rather spend that same hour working and get some overtime? Or would I rather just outsource it for like $40 and I've just made some profit? It's a business mentality you have to understand. And the reason I say this is because we're so busy sometimes on saving money, we don't realize that it's what we call opportunity cost. That time you spent doing this was time that could be spent with needle moving activity to generate more revenue. So always remember, time is greater than money. Next thing, and I know a lot of you guys that are in business that are very successful will agree with these, but relationships are always better than short-term profit. I got this from a really big Silicon Valley investor, investing like PayPal, things like that. And you bring this up and it always stuck with me. Don't be the person always winning on the deal. And you're probably like, what are you talking about? I was like, you ever had that person where you're just like, man, why is everything always about them? You could be like, my mom died. They're like, what? That's crazy, man. Anyways, what are you trying to do this weekend? You're like, yo, like, what happened? It's the same feeling in business. When you're always the one that wins, where you get that extra dollar, that extra deal, that percentage, people don't like that. You don't want to be sold and you don't want to associate with people like that. So I'm always big on relationships over short-term profit. Sometimes it costs me money, but it always gets back full time. And I'll tell you a quick story. I lost a little over $50,000 on a business deal probably a few years ago, right? And this is like, think about this. I'm working overtime, murders, shooting, violence, all that stuff, and saving up. And I just lost the money on the business deal. And, initially I was like, man, screw this. I'm gonna do this and that. That's myself, whatever. I'm just gonna make it back. I'm gonna figure it out. I know I'm gonna make this happen. Long term, years later, it came back tenfold. Number one, in a lesson. So I didn't fall for the same thing at $500,000. But the other thing is like, hey, you know what? You're gonna make it happen. And I didn't burn any bridges. And so the reason I say this is because ultimately, a lot of times you're thinking like, hey, I'm going to get this extra thing, or I'm going to get over on somebody. It never works out. Long term, it might be like do as you want unto yourself, or other people as you want on yourself, whatever religion you follow. But it comes down to building relationships, because you never know what that leads to later. And then the other thing is going to be proof of concept. So you always want to prove of concept of the thing you want first. Ignore the naysayers. I can't tell you how many ideas I've had that somebody said, oh man, that's like, this is going to happen, whatever. It's always something negative. So the rule of thumb is this: prove the proof of concept first, make sure it works. And it might be your first dollar. It might be your first location. It might just be your first relationship you build, whatever. But once you know it works, go and build a team. And the reason I say this is because you want to outsource. And I say team, not employees. You don't want employees. I absolutely despise employee mentality, guys. You talk to my team. I despise it. The first thing I say is like, can you figure it out? The second thing I say is like, do you have access to the internet? And the third thing is like, do you know google.com? Because when it comes down to it, it's like, you can figure it out yourself. I know you can. I wouldn't work with you if you couldn't. So it's the same thing with this. Once you've determined something works, you have to obviously lead from the front, and then from there, build a team, because it's exponentially going to increase. Because if you're the smartest person in the room, you're never going to grow. You want people that are experts in things. Like for myself, I'm not the best salesperson. I'm not the best marketer, but I'm surrounded by excellent salespeople. I'm surrounded by excellent operations people, because that way I can actually scale. Because if it's all revolves around me, it's like watered down lemonade. I'm pouring Kool-Aid packets, adding more water. At a certain point, it's just red juice, right? So you want to build that team. And then from there, what you want to do is focus on scaling. And when I say scaling, there's one aspect you want to focus on: efficiency. I can't tell you how many years I spent just like banging my head against the wall trying to figure things out, when I could have just got a mentor, when I could have just got it outsourced like with an agency, and just learn the tool really quickly and learn from there. Instead, I said, you know what? I got my ego, and the saying is you can be right or you can be rich. And eventually I said, you know what? I'm going to figure it out myself. I don't need anybody. Well, I stayed stagnant for years until finally, listening to a mentor, and like, dude, who cares? Just like, you don't need to be the person that's always right. So when you're scaling, you want to focus on efficiency. What that usually means is outsourcing. And what I mean by that is you're usually outsourcing the things that aren't the most productive. So I said, you want to think about how much your time is worth. You got to say, all right, am I going to go door to door and talk to all these businesses, or am I going to outsource this? Am I going to outsource this to a call center, to maybe referrals or whatever? But essentially, I'm thinking like, how can I remove myself? The mentality in business is this, guys. And I learned this, from a meme, but it's a corporate meme, but it says, the bigger your computer, the less important you are. And I thought to myself, like, man, that's such a big deal. Like, if you can't operate off of a laptop, you can't operate off an iPad, if you can't operate off of a phone, there's something that needs to be built out, a process, a person, software, technology, obviously at a bigger level. But essentially, that's the way you want to think about this, is like you want to outsource the things. So that way you can just review and just say, hey, and I can develop the team to actually do better and better. So everyone makes more money. The team makes a lot of money. You make a lot of money. Everyone's happy. You grow together. So I always want to outsource locations in this space specifically. And then from there, you want to use technology. So I'm a big advocate of technology. I will like delay hiring. I was talking to another business owner. They said the same thing. They're like, I need like 6 more people, but I'm just holding off because I think there's going to be like an AI update that takes care of their job. So right now it comes down to this. If you're not taking advantage of AI, if you're not taking advantage of just different technology, there's so much software available that's free to start and then you pay for it later. To actually scale this business, you're just not going to be as successful. You will do well, but you won't be as well as you can be. So I'm very big on using technology to scale. So that means running advertisements, making an online presence, etc. But when it comes down to it, there's always something that can be outsourced to technology versus a person. And then again, I keep bringing this up, build a team, build a team, build a team, build a team. Because when it comes down to it, Napoleon was only Napoleon because of the army he had with him. He had a great mentality, but he only had the army that was with him, and he eventually led to his fall. And then from there, you actually want to maintain an online presence. And again, I keep harping on this. A lot of people are like, dude, what? I thought this was a different business. Like, no, you just want to be present. And the reason why is because nowadays your personal brand, your brand in general, is what drives sales. Think about all the big influencers. You have Ashton Hall, you have Mr. Beast, Hermosis, you have all these big brands. So then you hear the company that's a part of them, it's because of their brand specifically. You got Speed, I Show Speed. Essentially, once they invest or they decide to do something, it exponentially grows because of their online presence. If you need help with that, super simple. There's some frameworks you follow to do this, but essentially that's what I would do. So who wants to see a live example? Like basically a live example of a website and what it should look like just to scale this, because I have one. Let me see if I even have access to this still. Digital coin. Let's see if this pops up. What I want you to do is comment the word brand, right? And so let's see if this pops up. Boom. I'll give you guys a quick preview, right? So this is like one of the brands we have. And if you go to my website, getemtechler.com, you can check out some of the brands also and scroll through. But essentially, this is how it looked like. Super simple one pager where you're accepting this information. You're probably looking at this like, man, this looks like a bank or like a place I would sign up. And that's exactly what it is. It's actually very, very simple. We're going to break down like what works, success stories, different businesses that are working with you, etc. And this is how you start getting things on autopilot. Because when it comes down to it, guys, if you're not using technology or your brand to your advantage, you're not going to scale as fast. I never believed in this. I hated social media. My Instagram just launched like 4 years ago, guys. Like I literally did not like social media whatsoever until finally like, man, I really need to take advantage of this, right? So with that being said, what you want to do is once you scale, you start diversifying because now you start creating income. So I'm big on like ant specialization, meaning that like, hey, you know what? You will build the business, you just double down and whatever, but it's not going to be an apple.com that you're exiting out of, right? So the way I look at this is like, you got to be selfish, take money out. So once you start scaling, you start generating revenue, you can reinvest some of that money into it, but let's just be realistic. Take money out and focus on the mission, whether it's paying for your parents' expenses, whether it's paying for the Lamborghini you want. It doesn't matter because if that's not going to drive you, you're not going to build as fast. And, I'm big on having my back against the wall. I literally will have like $3,000 in my checking account and I'll have a lot of money saved up and I never check it. But my checking account was always very low because it caused me to have that anxiety to keep growing. And as I keep diversifying at the end of the year, you're like, wait a second, you have big boy problems, which is what? Tax problems. But that's a better problem than the problem that you have right now. So essentially, when it comes down to it, that's going to be the strategy to being up and running. So if you want a custom plan, meaning that, obviously we build this, we know how to scale it, we know been in the space for a while, and you're saying, hey, you'd want more information on what that looks like. What I want you to do is comment freedom below. Comment freedom below. Essentially what that's going to look like is you will chat with one of our team members. They will break down step by step how this looks like, if it even makes sense to work with us, how that looks like, different options that work for you. And at the end of the call, no matter what, because we're not into like high pressure sales, you have options. You say, hey, this works, this doesn't work. It doesn't matter because at least you're going to be more educated and know exactly what you need to do to be successful, either with us or without us. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. I would love to work with you. Trust me. It's fun, right? You got the cafecito, Medellin, you fly out to the office. this is an Xbox. It's gonna be fun, right? But it's got to make sense for you. Let's just be realistic, right? So if you do want to take advantage of that, you say, hey, you know what? I want to understand what it looks like to actually work with you guys. I want you to comment freedom below, comment freedom. And then what I will do is, because I see you guys commenting, obviously, in the webinar, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have one of our team members text you, because I just forgot. I don't think I have a link in here. So what you can do is take advantage, book a call, because I think we're blocking it off because of the holidays. So it should be like a day available. But I'll do is I'll have somebody text you. If you're on Instagram, send me a message with the keyword freedom. And then what I'll do is have my assistant message you a link to actually book a call. And we'll go from there, guys, because at the end of the day, I'll leave you with this. I'm here for a fun life, not a long life. All right. And hopefully the long life happens. My dad's about to turn 84 tomorrow. Right. But I'm like, at least if I live life and I got to see AI, ChatGPT started talking back to me in a female voice, life is good. Life is good, guys. All right. But all jokes aside, I'm going to get sick. The doctor's going to be mad at me tomorrow. But if you do want to work with us, or you do have some questions, anything related to this, reach out. Closed mouths don't get fed. Send me a pigeon, send me an Instagram DM, follow me, like, comment, repost, whatever, because we're here for the long run and we're going to be building this thing like crazy, guys. Right. So my name is Ganam Techlet. I am founder of Dividend Shift, and I will catch you guys on the live training November 18th, 2025, guys. Peace.